Hello, everybody. Welcome to Level Up Academy podcast. Today, we are going to be talking to one of our amazing community member, Ben. I will introduce you to Ben, what he does, how he's building his community, and how we can help him amplify his efforts and his messages. But first, I am going to show you. You're going to be probably sick and tired by the time June comes. So, you guys know we did an anthology back in March, and this anthology was done at around March 10th. We hit number one international bestseller in Kindle. We hit number one new release. We hit number one on some of the categories, if not all categories we have on Amazon. But then I found out, I don't know if you guys are writer, authors, or publishers. I found out that Amazon is actually not the biggest distribution channels for our books. And you're like, CJ, you're lying. No. Go ahead and go to your KDP and look at how many countries they're actually in distribution. Then, mind you, that even though they are in Japan, I found out, okay, from a bookseller in Japan, my friend, and basically said, no, in Japan, we have certain rules and regulations. So even though it says in Japan and we might be able to read your Kindle, we can't really get your book, physical book at least. There's so many rules and regulations in Japan, what kind of books we can have here, that even though it says Amazon, we really don't have access to your books physically. I was like, whoa, that is something else. And then I had some people from different countries like Afghanistan, some parts of, one of our writers is from Nigeria. They don't have Amazon from Nigeria. They have local bookstores, they have universities, but they don't have access to our book. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're a writer there. Guess what? I found a research that I actually am testing right now because I'm a hybrid publisher, to basically get our distribution channels to 40,000. Okay, let me repeat, 40,000 distribution channels, including universities, mom and pop shop all over the world. And I didn't even ask any of our co-authors. You can ask them. I didn't even ask them for a penny more because I wanted our message to be amplified. And for those of us who are in the US, this will be the first anthology that I'm publishing. So this is my 8th or 9th book, that I will put our book at Powell's and Barnes and Nobles. And then hopefully, crossing my finger, I don't have control over the publishing company, but that I work with for the printing press. But if they are all good to go, I'm hoping that some of our co-authors, just beautiful and handsome people with great souls right here, can come to San Diego and do an author's night or afternoon, do a live session where we can have book signing at our local Barnes and Nobles. Like, how amazing is that? So that's my goal. And so you're going to see this until I hit that goal. And get this, for every book purchase that you guys have for our physical book when it comes out again in a couple of weeks, you're actually helping brothers and sisters in Africa that I donated this book portion of the sales to buy a certificate for each of these co-authors so they can have a tree under their name certified that they are giving back jobs to the farmers. And two, we're also putting back in our environment, right? Environment, to have more oxygen, to have more trees. I don't know if you saw the flooding in Dubai. It's crazy, right? There's so many things. We need more trees. We need more oxygen, right? So we're giving that back. And we're hitting 5 of United Nations goals, helping them out and helping our world out just for the purchasing of our book. Like, it's kind of crazy, right? And so that's why I dedicate myself, is always giving back to the community. And if you guys are in the book shopping to create your own book, you know it's going to take you $15, $20, $30,000 to create your own book, right? If you want the right marketing people, if you want the brand awareness people, if you want, the book cover, the editing, all of that stuff costs money. But in an anthology, it costs you, for us, some anthologies are $2,500. For us, it's $500. You know why we do that? You're literally just paying a sliver of that amount. But because our mission is to level up the world through education, education doesn't mean formal education, university. Education means life. Each and every single author in this book is giving you a glimpse of their life, of their adversity, and how they went beyond the boundaries of what is societal norm. And they thrive within that life's gray zone. During their adversity, after that adversity, they're thriving. And how did they do that? Well, you got to pick up the book to find out, right? So that is what we're doing with this anthology. Oh, welcome, guys. I know I have to wear a red dress today. This is just my t-shirt right now because I'm doing a photo shoot. And I'll tell you why I'm doing a photo shoot. But enough talking about me per se. But you guys know I have two niches in my Level Up Academy. One is called course content creation, and basically creating classes and courses that is what my community needs. So if you want to do marketing, branding, storytelling, or any type of technical, I do have a master's in cybersecurity and counterintelligence, any type of technical things that you need to know in terms of live streaming and social media, I can teach you through non-technical terms. I've already done the courses last year, and I had some students already have it. It's already got feedback and everything. And I'm also working with the Great Discovery to put the classes in 100 different dialects or languages all over the world, so we can reach the people around the world. But I'm going to tell you something. Part of my clientele, and I am so happy to tell you. Let me see if I can share it. Do you guys see this? Guess who's on the Business Insider? These have like 250 million people reading this magazine monthly, right? Guess who I put in here as a press release? Mike Asher Brenner from the Hounds of Business Community, the CEO and founder of that. Redneck Financial Coach is one of his other business. He does coaching. Guess who is in here? Yes, I do have access to over, I can't say 100 now because I'm going to show you something. I have access to apparently almost 500 magazines all over the world now that are premium and couture. One of them is Business Insider. And so this is Mike. He is featured in the Markets Insider under business, under stock news. Okay. Then I'm going to also give you another one of my other clients that I want to highlight. And this one is going to be Kofi. He is also a publisher, but he does the more hybrid as well. He's also on Business Insider. Flying Wings aims to change the publishing for independent authors. He is also an intelligence officer, by the way, and he also owns a clothing and sports company. He will surprise you where he came from and where he's at today. And he has his own solo book as well. And he does a lot of things within the community, right? So I put him on Business Insider as well. So if you look them up, Kofi, you will find him on that, right? That's one of my clients. So then I'm going to show you one more. And this one is actually Jacqueline. And she is, hold on one second here. She is local. She's in San Diego. And she does personal and professional in latest breakthrough initiative. She lives in San Marcos, California, or Encinitas. And she is also on Business Insider. And you're probably wondering, well, CJ, that's great that you have a lot of clients, but what is the cost? It really just depends on what you're trying to do. I do the write-up for you, so you don't have to worry about that. But I do interviews to make sure that you are in line with what we're trying to do. Being in the magazine is part of brand awareness and claiming your authority, right? And so, of course, I have to put Level Up in there. That's my company. Yes, I do have to pay for it because this is not my magazine. I do have my own magazine, Level Up Circle magazine, but this is a press release from Business Insider. So I have, guess what is in there? The book, right? Because we're going to keep going on this book. So if you need any brand awareness, I'm always open to discussing what you need. But this is the most amazing thing that just happened, guys. Like literally, like 1 hour ago, I just found out. Okay. And you know me, I always try to elevate and also find ways to have the platform. So we have MP3, we have 25 distribution channels. I found out that our podcast is also on Audible. So that's kind of amazing. And then we're hitting almost 100 nations and countries just on the podcast. We're still at 10% global podcasters in the world. So anybody who's in our YouTube, you can use Level Up Academy as your brand authority. I I was jumping up and down. This just happened. Do you see this? Do you see this? Okay. So Presswire, I'm one of their journalist writer. I'm going to try to get my own newsroom soon. But we're on book publishing industry. We're on business news today. We're on corporate social responsibility, education news today, international organization, lifestyle, and all of these news we're in. I'm talking Level Up. So what does that mean to you? If you're one of my clients, I can literally do this for you, right? In one setting, everywhere in here. Like watch, I'm going to click on this. What was that? World, right? So I'm going to show you. It is crazy, guys. I can elevate anybody at any time whenever you need help. So right now we are looking at this one right now. Okay. This is Asian American News Today. That's just one of them. Okay. We have another anthology, my sister Susanna and I. It's going to be starting on May 1st. And you're like, well, I don't like anthologies because blah, blah, blah. Our anthology is different. Not only you will have a chapter in our book, but you'll also be on my TV show, which is usually Thursdays and Sundays. Usually I'll put you on a Thursday TV show. It's 9 a.m. PST. You don't have to pay. Being on our network with over 100 plus hooked up to a Hollywood network is going to cost you money per a la carte if you want to do on a TV show. On the radio show, it's Black 105. It's regular radio, not just Spotify or anything or iHeart. We get you in there for free if you're part of our anthology. Where do you get that? A built-in marketing? Nowhere. Tell me somebody who does that. Nowhere. Nobody, because I've done my research. Most of people, when they have a publicity hub, you have to pay for everything you breathe in. For us, if you're in our anthology, you're built in. Marketing, built in. But your story matters to us more than anything. So this is just one of them. Look at where our book is going. Everywhere. Do you see this? Everywhere. All of these, Level Up Academy and this book, Beyond Boundaries, is everywhere. I could go on and on and on. All of these links. This press release is on all of these news. If you click on any of these right now, you'd see Level Up Academy. This right here, initiatives to revolutionize initiative development. It's on Asian American News. It's everywhere. I can do this for you if you're one of my clients as well, right? This is separate. I do social media brand awareness. So that's what I do. So I'm like so happy. And when I woke up, I was like, boom, 300. So anyhow, this is for me an invite to you for our next anthology. So if you have a story, we're more concerned of the story. If you have a story that you did in your life, because you only write 1,500 to 3,000 words. We're looking for somebody who has a story, an adversity that you went through that they moved beyond boxes. What does that mean exactly? So for example, if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, I have ADHD, adult ADHD. That's a box that I'm in. That's something I cannot shake, something I can't take medicine and it goes away, right? I might be able to take medicine to kind of neutralize some of the bad stuff that's happening with that. But it's a marathon. It's a journey that's part of me. But in order for us to do something with our life internally, you need to actually go in that box, ADHD box, and said, okay, how do I get out of this box? what kind of adversity, what kind of ups and downs, you're talking depression, you're talking squirrel brain, you're talking in a conversation. Well, I move from conversation to conversation in split seconds. And then so you're going to probably think, if you don't have ADHD, that I'm rude because you're not done with your thoughts. Or for me, my thoughts and my brain just jumped, right? That's something I need to control and I need to be able to manage, especially in business, because I got to pay attention to my clients. So there are bads and goods on everything, but being aware and how the steps on how to make sure you are still creating it as a superpower rather than a negative thing is what we're looking for in this moving beyond boxes, a self journey discovery, right? So make sure to ask me or Susanna Dawn if you wanted your story to be publicized. And when we go publicize, we go big publicize. So you can see Level Up Academy is in there everywhere. And this book, whoever the authors in this book, your name is getting dragged in all of these social media outlets, on all of these news throughout the world, publishing companies, UK educational system, so you can amplify your message or messages further. So that's what we do for Level Up Academy. Anyhow, let's see who is here first. Ooh. There it is. Speaking of the devil, Hounds of Business Community. So while I'm going to highlight you guys' comments in here, I want to bring Ben Gutman because I want you guys to know him. I'm going to ask him questions. You guys can ask him questions too, whatever that you need. And this is perfect because our conversation is about the art of influence in marketing. So here comes Ben. Hi, Ben.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Constance.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's I'm in New York. It's a lovely spring day, and that just makes everything better, right?
Yeah, here in California, spring is horrible because I'm sneezing a lot because of all the pollens. But I can't complain. It's a beautiful day, like you said. I'm grateful the sun is out and it's not hot. It's not cold. It's just perfect, right?
Absolutely. I've been working with a lot of folks out in California over the last year, and I'll tell you, they do have us beat when it comes to January, February, March. But once you get to the spring and the fall, spring, summer, fall here, it's pretty great.
Yeah, we love our non-snow, right? We don't want to do. Listen, I lived in Boston for a while, and I lived in Virginia, D.C. And they had where I used to walk in Boston in the freezer. That's how I say it, because when they do the sweeping, the de-icing, the snow just goes into the walkway, and then the people shovel the walkway so we could walk. And literally, the snow is like above my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm from the islands. I can't handle this snow business, but I didn't have a choice. But yeah, I don't like snow, period. I like to visit, but I don't like to live in there.
I like the snow when it is snowing, but I want it to melt immediately once it hits the ground. That's basically it.
No, black eyes, no. I don't like to drive in snow. Well, welcome to Level Up. And I wanted our viewers right now, we almost have 600 viewers live watching us. I want you to think back 20 years ago and find within your timeline some of the significant changes in your life that got you here where you are today. What do you think?
Is that a question for me, or is that a question for
Yeah,
the? That's a question for me. Okay, I thought you were asking the viewers. So I appreciate that. I mean, a little bit of my background is I ran a marketing agency for 10 years. I started that basically right after I graduated college, and I had a professor at the time who was running his own agency just outside of the city. And at the time, I was really just completely I was the big student government nerd, right? I was president of student government. I was heads down doing all that. I didn't do the internships and the other activities I probably should have been doing if I wanted to jump into this career. But thankfully, I had this professor who pulled me aside one day and said, I know you maybe want to start your own thing. We need some help with digital. Maybe we can figure something out, right? And so that was kind of a big turning point there, where we hopped in my old '94 Honda Accord. We drove out of the city. We set up shop in their basement, slapped our logo on the wall, and we tried to do work with them. We tried to do work with other businesses, and we had more success of other businesses, to be honest, because they were working with big Fortune 500 clients, and we were a bunch of knuckleheaded, 21-year-olds that were trying to figure out what we were doing. But I really, to this day, still appreciate, the mentorship and the opportunity that I had because of that experience. And so, if that conversation didn't happen, then I wouldn't have run my business. I wouldn't have sold my business. I wouldn't have written this book, and who knows where things would be.
I love that influence, right? Like, it just, sometimes you just need to ignite something and you're like, oh, I can run with that, and then go from there. So I love that your professor actually had a chance to do that. I maybe have close to 12,000 students now, and I'd say maybe a dozen gave me like a feedback after years of teaching, and after they've already been, and they literally find me on LinkedIn and send me messages like, Dr. Leland, thank you for doing this. Like, I didn't know how much impact you made until it puts a seed in your head. So that makes a whole lot of sense when you're, talking about someone inspiring you, and most of all, your teacher. So I love that.
Oh, absolutely. And now that I am in that position a lot of times, so about 10 years ago, I started teaching at the same college, at my alma mater, Baruch College here in New York. And in that experience, I've had also about 1,000 some odd students. It's been an incredibly wonderful experience. And I joke that they're going to have to pull me out of there, like kicking and screaming. I'm going to keep doing that until they stop, if they don't let me do. But every time I get a email or LinkedIn message or something from a former student that says that they enjoyed my class, that it meant something to them, that makes my day every single time.
It does, because that means that you're actually doing the work of community service, giving back to the community through inspiration and thoughts and all of that. Now, I have a question. Given your success with digital natives groups and your book on messaging, how do you approach innovating in a field as crowded as marketing?
So here's the thing. When you are in an environment that is like a LinkedIn group full of other marketing people, or a Slack group, or a course with other marketing people, it feels like it's very crowded, right? It feels like there's a million marketing agencies, that there's a million people that are doing this. And yes, there's not zero of them, but most people who are clients are not hanging out in those type of environments. They are they're on nonprofit boards. They are volunteering in a political campaign. They are, in the PTA for their kid to school. All these are the rooms where the people who actually, who matter for you as a potential client, where they're going to be. And in those rooms, there might be two people that do marketing, but there might be one person, might be no people, right? So I think a lot of folks think that because we have access to such a huge, global vision of this type of network, that everybody who is hiring somebody to do marketing or anything, right? Accounting, plumbing, whatever, is picking the best one, the first one on Google for marketing agency. Meanwhile, what most people are doing they're going to their network. They're going to people they know and say, hey, do you have anybody to recommend for this? And that's how business tends to be built in this industry. So, when you talk about crowded, that's the first thing I think about it. It is crowded. It is a noisier space than it was before. When I started my agency, it was kind of the dawn of the mobile era. It was the dawn of kind of the big social media advertising boom, and we were well timed to take advantage of those type of things. But there's still opportunity today to do that, right? Even if there's more people, there's always going to be opportunity if you're able to uncover it.
That's true. I always look at the differentiator within marketing and PR agencies. I work with an international PR agency, and then to get all of my clients, the authority to get into big organizations and big newsroom, really, to get their clients in there. And people, I think there's a misconception that if you're going to be on these magazines or things like that, that your conversion rate's going to be at 90%. And that's the misnomer. But I have to literally educate them before they even sign up with anything with me, and said, hey, I'm brand awareness. I don't do conversion. That's funneling and sales. There's a difference, right? But it's technically part of marketing still. But what I do is I will, whoever your salespeople are in the funnel, then I work with them to leverage your presence in all of these media that's your differentiator. How do you handle that in your agency when people are like, I'm not getting conversion, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, our agency worked on a whole host of different types of projects. So I sold my agency about 2 years ago. Um, we worked on a whole host of different types of projects. Some were direct conversion. A lot more were brand awareness. Some things were kind of even just more like infrastructure build, right? We're building someone's website or their mobile app or something like that. I think that you hit something important, which is that a lot of people will hire an agency and think that immediately that's going to do massive kind of gangbusters results. And so your job as somebody who is a marketer running any sort of professional services firm is to manage expectations a lot of times. And so you can't promise something that's not within your control. You can promise that you're going to build a thing. You can promise you're going to put these many hours into something. You can promise that you're going to do activities X, Y, and Z, but you can't really promise that you're going to get a certain number of sales or you're going to get a certain number of leads or anything else. And so if you get into a situation where you built a contract that says you have to get those things, you're going to be screwed, right? You're going to end up being in a situation where you did all this work, but for some reason, I don't know, a hurricane hit somewhere. And therefore, the metrics weren't met and you're not going to get paid. You can put incentives in your contracts to say, hey, you know what? On top of like we're going to get paid the baseline for doing the work that we're doing. But on top of that, if we do hit these big performance goals, we're going to get a few extra dollars as part of that. I've been involved in a few of those relationships, but it's important, when you're running that type of business to make sure that, that you get paid for your work, not for kind of the randomness of the market.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, let's get it straight. I do brand awareness. I don't do sales conversion. Now, if you want to hire me to sell something, that's a different story, right? What I do is brand awareness, because it doesn't matter how good you are, how amazing your product is. If you're on that little corner right there behind Johnny's desk, no one knows who you are and how amazing you are. That's my job, is to be the amplifier of your message. So thank you for saying that. Now, what trends are you currently leveraging to keep messages relevant and engaging? Especially people look up to you, especially your past clients, right? You've done this job well. And how do you make sure to keep your messages relevant in this industry?
So that ultimately ends up being a good segue into the book that I wrote. So I wrote this book called Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. Came out back in the fall. It's been a ton of fun. It just got a couple book awards, which is pretty cool. But this book is the result of the question just like this one, which is, well, what makes something work when others don't, right? How do you make one message? How do you, figure out why a certain email sold something and something else did, and why a proposal worked, another one didn't, why an ad campaign worked, another one didn't. Well, it turns out that the difference between the communicators that are the most effective and those that are struggling is the communicators the most effective are simple. And what do I mean by simple? Because if that's all you need, then you don't need the rest. That's the first page of the book, right? You don't need the other 207 pages. But if you want to dig into what does that mean to be simple, what is the why, the mechanism behind why that works, and then the how of how you get there and the science behind that, well, it's surprisingly deep and surprisingly difficult. So that's the big headline, is that the simpler you are with your messaging, with your advertising, with your communication, generally that's going to be much more effective than the other way around.
That's so true. I think it's harder to be simple than to meander and just keep talking.
Oh yeah.
It is harder to be simple. And
So,
go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, so there's a quote that's often misattributed to Mark Twain, which is, I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write you a short one, right? It takes a lot of work to get to that point. And it's because inside of our heads and in and outside, we're facing these pressures that pull us in the other direction. Internally, we have what's known as an additive bias. We also have a complexity bias, where when we're faced with a problem, we're more likely to add than we are to subtract. And then the complexity one is saying, well, when we're looking at a problem, we're more likely to find the more complicated answer than we are to find the simpler one. So that is inside of our head. Externally, we're forced by the market. We're forced by the job market. We're forced by, the PR news cycle. We're forced by our boss demanding something, that we put more and more and more into something. And so when you look at these two pieces, we're pulled all the way in this other direction, pulled far away from simple. And that ends up being really the big problem.
True. And even when I've noticed that too, when people try to use big words and they don't actually really know those big words and they use it in a context out of context, I lose respect, right? It's like, why didn't you just say, I can't eat? Instead, you're like, I'm so parched and I just stop. You know what I mean? Just tell like, CJ, I'm hungry. Give me something to eat.
So
Yeah,
you're not the only person that's the case for. Stanford University, I believe, or it might be University of Pennsylvania. I apologize if I got them mixed up. I think Stanford University did an experiment where they took a bunch of graduate school application essays, and they took the regular pile of them, put them over here. They took those essays, and then they basically swapped out the words for more complicated language, for longer words that were synonyms of them. And so they took these two essays and they had judges review the different piles of them. And so you would think, well, the bigger words, more intelligent, therefore they're more likely to be admitted, or we have a higher view of them. But the opposite was the case. When researchers looked at the more complicated language, the more difficult to read essays, well, they were rated as less intelligent. They were rated as less enjoyable to read, and they were less likely to be admitted to grad school based off of those essays, according to the judges. And the opposite was true as well. The same thing happened when they looked at famous works of like philosophy, and they kind of they went back and forth. It worked when they took a more complicated thing and they dumbed it down. The same patterns held true, which is that the bigger the language, it often does the opposite of what we're looking to do with it.
I think read that study. Harvard Business Review did similar. I don't remember if I was telling that on my personal branding and selling course or social media marketing, one of them, because I always talk about blunders and how languages in English translated to Chinese and then translated back to English is like, what happened? Like you just missed a little bit there. And it's so amazing how if you're going to complicate words just as an English speaker, imagine if you have to explain that to a non-native English speaker. I'm like, guys, how are you going to buy from Bangladesh or India? What is happening here, right? And so I love that. Now,
and also, just to hop on one more here, actually. So we use that big vocabulary, we use those SAT words often as kind of a crutch for status a lot of times, right? So two things. Number one is when you look at academic papers published by authors from universities lower in the U.S. News and World Report rankings versus those that are published by the authors at the higher ranked institutions, the lower ranked institutions, those authors used much bigger language, much more jargon, many more acronyms than the ones at the higher ones, because it's kind of the status thing. And this is my favorite one. So in the United States, there are about 100, I think it's 138 international airports. And so international airports can be a lot of different things. You can be JFK by me over here with thousands of flights, or you can be, some, like, I think Plattsburgh upstate New York, with like one flight to, to somewhere in Canada. So there's very big differences between these airports, but they're all international. International connotes some sort of status, right? When research, I think this was at the University of Pennsylvania, when these researchers looked at the websites and the marketing materials for all of these different airports, they broke them up into two buckets. They said, okay, smaller airports and the bigger airports. How often do they use the word international to describe themselves? And so as opposed to calling yourself JFK, you call yourself JFK International Airport, right? Something like that. What happened was these are the rough numbers here because I don't have them in front of me, but what happened was these small airports used that language about 70% of the time to describe themselves as an international airport. The small airports used it about 30% of the time, right? So the large airports about 30% of the time. So the small airports were more likely to lean on this big language to kind of puff up their status, as opposed to the big airports that feel more confident in their own messaging.
That's very interesting. I think it's human nature too. Like when you think about people, that's funny that you mentioned that, because things are percolating in my head and saying, because some people who have a lot of money don't really say I have a lot of money. And they just show it, and they are very simple, and they do things for the community most. The ones who actually feel less than have to make sure that everyone hears them louder with no value in their messaging, but they're loud, right? And they don't make sense on some of the times. And I was like, that's funny that you said that, because people are doing the same thing, not just businesses, right? My next question is, having built and managed a successful team in the past when you have your agency, what are your key strategies for cultivating a creative and productive organizational culture? I'm teaching this class, so my students are probably watching this.
Oh boy. Okay. It's really hard. It's really hard. There's not a single answer to this, which is that this, is the one thing you must do, that therefore you're going to have a more successful team. There's some research I've seen about the idea of psychological safety, and I'm sure you've come across that term before in a number of different books. Psychological safety is, it's okay to be wrong, right? Where you basically, you feel like you can say something dumb and people aren't going to jump down your throat and make fun of you for it. You're not going to get kicked out of the room. There's not going to be professional consequences for you spitballing an idea that's not necessarily a winner, right? So that I know the data points to that being a huge determinant of creativity and success in innovative teams. And I've seen that as well. I've gone through moments where we've had, when you have a team, sometimes you swing and a miss a little bit when you're hiring somebody, unfortunately. Most of the time we were pretty happy with the team that we built. Once in a while you hire somebody and you realize, after sitting with them in a meeting for a few months, you're like, this person's kind of bringing the wrong energy, right? This person is not helping us be more creative, helping us be more productive in this conversation, as well as, just in kind of the general vibe in the office. So eliminating people or processes that will harm your psychological safety is a really important one. And it's much more of an active elimination than building. It's hard to you have psychological safety in your own head, right? You can say something and it won't work. As you get bigger and bigger and you build bigger teams, it gets a little bit harder sometimes to maintain that level of safety. So I would say that's the biggest one. And that ties into the idea of, like the hire slow, fire fast type of thing. We only had to fire a handful of people in 10 years. But every time we did, it was the worst day for us, it was the worst day for them, but the next day was great because everybody feels better, because you're not doing anybody a service by keeping them on your team if they're not thriving, right? Because they should go work somewhere where they can do better work, where they can be happier. And the rest of your team deserves to be in an environment that they can count on their colleagues.
That's so true. For me, I think the key strategies, I think the most employees, well, I'm trying to think how many employees. I think 2,000 employees was the most that I've handled. And it was global team. So it was very difficult. I wasn't sleeping a lot because the problem sometimes is coming from Hong Kong and it's 2 a.m. my time, but they had the issue. So I have to like jump in. I found there's 5 things that I was reflecting when I was asking this question and writing it for you. I was reflecting for me, and I'm like, what do I do with my team? What are my strategies on making sure that they're productive and the culture is, on the dot? I think empowerment and ownership, right? If you empower your team to give them ownership of the projects, encourage, like, hey, you can be independent, provide the support, and then just say, hey, this is going to be your project. Let's see what you can come up with and go from there, right? That's
Mhm.
what I usually do for my people because I can't babysit everybody. I don't like micromanage things. I don't like that at all. I also like the continuous learning and development, meaning it's okay to make mistakes. And so long as you own it and you have a solution, don't come to me with a problem with no solution. Come to me with a problem and then let's see what the solutions are. And part of that is really open communication, right? Establishing clear line of communication. Some people like to just text. Some people like
Mhm.
phone. Some people like Zoom. If you don't know your manager's preference, it's going to be difficult to communicate. And if you don't tell your people what your preference, it's also hard for them to communicate. Recognizing recognition and awards, even without monetary stuff. It's like, hey, good job, Ben, you did an
Mhm.
excellent out of 2,000 employees. They'll be like, whoa, thank you, right? And then adaptability and flexibility was my last one that I've noticed. It's because change are constantly happening, especially in big organization. So if you encourage your team to be more flexible, to respond to shift, right? Because that's happening, it's really crucial for staying relevant to me and aligning the long-term goals for the organization. What are your thoughts on those 5?
Oh boy. Hold on. So what were the five again? Because there's a lot there.
Empowerment and ownership,
Okay.
continuous learning,
Yes.
open communication, recognition and rewards, and then adaptability and flexibility.
I think those are all great. I think those are great. I think that the continuous learning one was important for us too. Is I think that happens when you start a business is in the beginning you get very You're very enthusiastic about the topic, and you're reading all these books and this and that, trying to learn things. But what always the natural thing that happens next is at some point you say, "Yeah, I kind of know what I'm doing. I don't need to keep learning anything. I don't need." Um, and that's a dangerous place to be in because every field changes, digital marketing especially was something that changes all the time. Um, Trends change, research comes out, we learn more and more about the world every day. And so to basically look at, we have this base of knowledge, it is now set in amber, we never have to learn anything again. That's a very dangerous place to be as an individual or as a team. We At some point, I'll give props to my colleague who led this piece. We put a book club together for the company. It was not quite mandatory, but everybody participated in it. It was great. Um, where we basically would what helped was that we would buy all the employees the books, right? So we said, okay, we're gonna buy 10 copies or 12 copies or 15 copies, however many at the time that are people in the club. We're gonna buy them for everybody. We're gonna sit down once a month and or once every 2 months, and we're gonna review what we learned in this book. Sometimes we did books. Once in a while, we mixed it up with it being like a lecture or maybe a series of articles. And it was important to have that be a thing that was a regular part of our process because then we learn stuff that we put to use in the next project, we put to use in the next year. And I think that the biggest difference often between folks that are successful in either their business or just in really any endeavor is the people that keep learning, the people that keep being curious about stuff are the ones that you know will ultimately rise to the top.
I think so too. Continuous improvement. What do you think I'm still in school? I'm a student for life for sure. You and I teach as an adjunct professor, right? What methods do you use to ensure your marketing lessons are impactful and retainable for your students? And how do you measure the success of your teaching methods?
So I'm an adjunct at Baruch College, part of the City University of New York. My students are mostly seniors. They're all marketing majors. And so that's a very interesting place to be. They're all about to graduate. Either within a few weeks at the end of the semester or the following semester after I have them. And so I try as hard as I can to instill a couple different things. Number one is a sense of general kind of self-determination in what you're doing. I do that by, I'm not babysitting them to take attendance every single time. I tell them what the deal is. I say, this is your tuition. This is how much it costs per course. This is how much it's costing you per meeting here. My goal is to provide that value plus a cent every single time. And so if I do that, great, keep coming. If I don't do that, it's up to you. You're paying it either way. It doesn't matter. So starting off of that on the first day, which is saying it's up to you. You're an adult. You can choose what to do or not to do. You're already paid for this. The consequences are yours. All the way through at the end of the class where I talk about careers and I talk about salaries and I talk about all these different things in a very frank way, which is often not discussed in the classroom. But that's one piece. The other thing I try really hard to do is to prepare them to hit the ground running when they do graduate. So that for me is often the measure of success, which is number one is I assign them projects that involve them going out in the real world and doing things. And by doing that, I give them something to talk about at that first job interview. They get to say, hey, I did this project and I got this much success, raised this much money, got this many followers, got this many men, whatever it is. They're able to point to a real thing they did, not just a piece of classwork they did. That's number one. Number two is I try very hard to bring in other professionals to the classroom as much as I can. If they're going to be judges or speakers or mentors, otherwise, just people from my network of other marketers, because that will jumpstart their network, right? If they can look and say, hey, you know what? I had 8 people come into class in different capacities. All of a sudden, those are 8 professionals that know hundreds of other people and thousands of other people, and that ends up kind of snowballing into a lot more opportunity. So, that I look at teaching as my favorite hobby, as I mentioned before, but I really, I really try to put a lot of effort into making sure that the results of it are something that are meaningful to the students.
I love that. I actually learn a lot from my students. Most of my students right now are veterans. And so my oldest student's like 78 years old. You can't possibly teach him about life. He can teach you about life. And so when I talk about chain of command, often in managerial discussions, I refer to all of them. I'm like, guys, I know you're a captain. I know you're this. So talk to us in chain of command on how you handle it, because there's so many leaders in our community. But often when you're teaching, you lecture a lot, you talk a lot. So I always limit my lecture to 1 hour and that's it. The rest of the class is either class discussions or sharing your thoughts based on the elements that we're talking about. So that's how I do that. Can't believe we're already ending here. So I'm going to announce, guys, we have a 11 o'clock show with Susanna today called Moving Beyond Boxes. It's going to be on LinkedIn and on her YouTube as well. We're going to go and talk about the anthology more, but I wanted to also give and provide more chances for our community to be part of our anthology on May 1st. So here's what Susanna and I came up. We are having a contest for, let's say today is the 17th until the 30th. Okay, so you have until the 30th, which is a Tuesday of April. Yeah, we're still in April. I almost wanted to say May. Until the 30th April to belong to our anthology. All you got to do is 60 seconds of video and tag us. So put it on your social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I'm on all 4 of them. LinkedIn would be great because it is the professional platform. Tag Susanna and I, both of us, so we could hit like. That means we saw it. 60 seconds of what your chapter is going to be, and maybe 1 or 2 lessons learned that you want the community to know. How you move beyond boxes, how basically society is telling you you have to be this. Like I've been told I couldn't possibly be in media. I've done journalism since I was in high school, right? But then when I wanted to do on TV and things like that, literally someone told me, one of my professors, like, yeah, you're really good at writing, but being on TV, you're Asian, you're short. They like blonde, blue eyed, unless you're in telenovela. I was hurt. I was like, how am I gonna stretch myself to be taller and change my skin to be different? I can't do that. At least I could put a contact lens. And I was so discouraged. And today, here we are with all the medias out there that I have access to. So that's how we move beyond boxes. It might take us 30 years, 40 years, right, of your life. But if you're consistent and that's what your passion is, that's where we need to be. So for you, all you have to do is create 60 seconds, no more than 60 seconds, people, of a video, put it on any of your socials, tag Susanna and I, of what your story is going to be and 1 or 2 lessons learned and how you move beyond that box, right? Whatever box that you were in. So that's all. Now, Ben, my last question to you, if this is your last day today on this earth, what would be your parting message to your current and future families in terms of living life, legacy, and impact?
Oh boy. So obviously that's a big question. I'm going to give you a small answer though, which is Warren Zevon, who was a singer-songwriter. You probably know Werewolves of London is his biggest hit. He was dying of cancer about 20 years ago, and they did a show about him, I think on like VH1, and he was being interviewed by David Letterman, and they asked him, well, now that you're dying, now that you're going to be you're going to go, how has this kind of changed your life a little bit? And he said, well, now I enjoy every sandwich, right? And that was his advice to everybody, was enjoy every sandwich, right? All the stuff that you do in terms of work, all the stuff you do in terms of, quote unquote legacy, at some point it gets washed away. But your experience here and making sure you take the most of it is I think the way forward.
Awesome. For me, my legacy would be how I help my community. I think here, this is from Brian Drury, and I interviewed him on here. I don't know if you guys know who Brian Drury is, but one of his YouTube, I think, has like 20 million views on TED Talk. He said, when you're in business, stay. And I'm like, what does that mean? And he's like, stop thinking it's about you, because it isn't. When you're in business, you're actually there to help your clients, and there you're supposed to be the guide, not the actor of the whole thing. And I always kind of remember that as well. And this is my quote. Hopefully you can give us your favorite quote. This is my favorite quote. I said, to handle yourself, use your head, but to handle others, use your heart. What about you? What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is, it's a little bit of a butchering of it, but it's just a ship is safe in port, but that's not why we build ships.
True. We need to carry people with all kinds of shapes and sizes. I love it.
A ship is safe. It's that go out and do the thing, right? There's no harm in trying, and there's only the answer to every question you don't ask is no, right? Like that's the way I look at it, to the point where I even made a little picture of a ship as my phone background.
Aw, that's so nice. That's your favorite quote, definitely. Can you invite us to what you're doing now? Where can we find your book?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Cassis. There's been a ton of fun to be here, and everybody for listening. Again, my book is called Simply Put: Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. You can grab it anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you go to my website, bengutman.com, 2 T's and 2 N's in my last name. It's not a great name for radio, but if you go to bengutman.com, you can find links to it. You can go and grab a free chapter download over there. You can sign up for my email list. It's all free. Or shoot me an email, reach out on LinkedIn. Anything I can do to help, let me know. And thanks again for being here. Really appreciate it.
Of course. And there's Ben's LinkedIn information, guys, Ben Gutman. And thank you so much for your time today, sir. We appreciate you. And please wait for me in the green room. I'll be right there. Guys, that was so amazing, right? Ben is amazing because not only he's an educator, I love educators. We do the work for the community, for the love of people, but also we are amplifying your messages at Level Up Academy, and I'm so excited. I cannot wait. Sindel, I know you're on the phone, but we're giving away. We're doing a giveaway. We're also doing a contest, really, for anybody you know, to actually enter to our giveaway. There's only one winner, and we're giving you until the 30th, okay, of this month to send any type of videos that you have on social media. 60 seconds. That's all you do. 60 seconds. And I want, or I should say, we want two things. And Susanna will let us know more rules and regulations that she wants to add because this is her project. And basically, we want to hear you give us your chapter, what your chapter will be, like a little synopsis. And then, of course, one or two things of what we would learn about moving beyond that box, right? And you're like, CJ, 60 seconds? Hey, in my class, elevator pitch is 60 seconds, and you can totally do it. And Ben, hello, just told you, make it simple, people. Make it simple. Okay. So if you didn't learn anything today, is that from Ben. Make it simple so that it will work for you. And then tag Susanna and I. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I will see you at 11 a.m. PST. So in an hour, Susanna and I will be doing Moving Beyond Boxes, and we're going to talk about the anthology that's coming up, more information that's coming up. And then, of course, again, it's built-in marketing for you guys, so you don't have to do anything. And we're going to look and see how we can distribute more. But this anthology is already in like 300 news outlets as of today. So good job, everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you. I will see you tomorrow. I have a TV show with Kirsten Norai. Why do you keep saying Christine? Kirsten Norai, a fellow educator. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow at 9 a.m.